Now, the Philippines votes on May 12, and what's at stake goes far beyond politics. The midterm elections will shape the country's economic future, impacting key reforms, public spending, and the institutions designed to keep the government accountable. But with entertainers, controversial figures, and indicted candidates leading the pack, business leaders and policymakers are asking, where is this all headed? Joining us now is Diwa Guinigundo, former Deputy Governor of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, IMF alumnus, and now the chairman of the advisory panel at the ASEAN+3 Macroeconomic Research Office. Hi, sir. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, good morning, Mikey, and thank you for having me here again.
Yeah, we're going to have an interesting discussion ahead of, when everyone votes on May 12th. So, sir, when you look at the current slate of likely senatorial frontrunners based on the latest SWS surveys, what's your initial reaction, and what does this say about our electorate?
Well, to say the least, I am appalled, I'm enraged, and I'm disappointed. Many of these frontrunners are involved in extrajudicial killing, whether directly or indirectly. They supported the POGO in the Senate and agreed to defund PhilHealth. Those are very important issues. Some of them are also convicted of plunder, but were simply pardoned. And many of them have nothing to offer except their entertainment value. They act, they sing, and they dance. Our country, given its current condition, has the least need of this kind of candidates. We need candidates who have the integrity and honesty, those who have competence and ability, those with experience and track record in public policy. In addition, we need candidates who stand on righteousness and justice, those who would not tolerate, let's say, plunder in government, particularly in the case of Parmali during the time of the pandemic, and those who are also prepared to support the Philippines' claim of various territories in the West Philippine Sea. You see, Mikey, we have a new pope, no, at the Vatican. And I am told, and I read in the papers, that before they tried and discern who the next pope is, they are given, no, and they discussed among themselves the current state of the globe, of the world, the current state of the church, and on that basis, what kind of pope should we have? On that basis, they chose the pope who is now called Pope Leo XIV. In other words, we need to see what the economy, what our politics require today, and on that basis, determine the kind of appropriate candidates we should vote for on May 12. This is not showing in the Pulse Asia survey, Mikey, unfortunately.
Sir, speaking of the Pulse Asia survey, it paints one picture. But when you look at mock elections at universities like the one at UP Law, they paint a totally different picture. Can you tell us more about why, in your opinion, there's such a stark divide?
Well, it's very clear that the Pulse Asia survey is national in scope. And therefore, that survey captures those among us who are in the fringes of society, those whose educational level is quite limited, and those who are prone to fake news, and they have little or limited understanding of what goes on in the economy and in the political situation in the Philippines today. And therefore, you see the kind of results that we have in the Pulse Survey Asia. In the case of the polls among universities and academic institutions, well, this consists of the limited segment of our population who are studying in the university, so they have the capacity to process, the capacity to understand what is going on. And therefore, given the results of those university polls, you don't see the magic 12 in the Pulse Asia survey in the results of the student poll in the universities and other academic institutions.
Sir, what would you say would be the macroeconomic risks? What are the risks to the economy should we perpetuate this sort of government system?
Well, the kind of macroeconomic system that we have is not sustainable, and it is not inclusive. When we talk of sustainability and inclusivity, we're talking of what is required by the Philippine economy moving forward. You see, we experienced a 9.5% drop in the real GDP in 2020. That's a big drop, 9.5. The others, the world average was about between 2 to 3% decline. Ours was a big 9.5% decline. On top of that, poverty incidence in the Philippines remains serious. Income inequality continues to persist in the Philippines today. So we need economic growth that is more than the 6 to 8% targeted by the Philippine government. We need to grow more, 9% or more, so that our economy will have a strong growth momentum. We can offer more jobs to those who are unemployed and those who are underemployed. And basically, we need more infrastructure. We need more quality education and reliable public health. If we do not produce a sustainable and inclusive economic growth, those social goals will be impossible to achieve.
You know, at present, our economy is underperforming because there's so much potential, but we need to invest. How do we help our voters, especially the young voters, understand the connection between policy making and the everyday issues that they face? They face issues of lack of jobs, poor education, limited healthcare. How do we help them understand the need for policymakers that understand how to fix things moving forward and not just provide entertainment value?
That's a big challenge, Mikey. You see, in the latest PISA ranking, PISA is a program for international student assessment. We rank among the bottom dwellers. In other words, our students are the weakest, some of the weakest students around the world in reading, in math, and in science. On top of that, we scored very low in terms of critical thinking. Now, critical thinking is very important precisely because that will allow our students, our young voters, to be able to connect the dots. What is the relationship between good economic and political governance and the ability of the economy to grow consistent with the requirements of our population for more jobs, for lower prices, for better budgeting, budget process, so that our priorities will be achieved. So that is a very challenging, that is a very big challenge, Mikey. However, in terms of stopgap, I think the various agencies of government, including BSP, Finance, Budget, NEDA, I think they should try and conduct all of this educational and financial, economic literacy campaign in coordination with their regional offices in the provinces, in the rural areas, and again, in coordination with local governments. In other words, we need to inform our young voters in order to elevate their level of understanding and ability to connect those dots. Otherwise, we will have a problem because our problem is structural. We need to root out the issues in terms of how much budget do we allocate to education? How much budget do we allocate to public health? Education and health go together. Okay, we need quality education. We need quality public health so that our students will be instructed and educated properly. And this is possible precisely because they are healthy and they are strong. They receive good nutrition and very good public health facilities. So the problem is very difficult. It's very challenging, and that will require good governance, Mikey.
Now, on another front, sir, universal suffrage, the right of all adult citizens to vote, is a cornerstone of our democracy. But, what can we do to strengthen the systems so that we don't risk economic failure?
Well, again, I go back to the fundamentals. It goes back to the three types of governance, no? Economic governance, political governance, and social governance. Several years ago, some researchers tried to take a deep dive into this issue of governance. And governance, and on one hand, an economic growth and per capita GDP. Per capita GDP means a better distribution of income. Um, they are very much correlated. If we have good economic governance, our economy grows faster. But if we have good political and social governance, per capita GDP goes up faster. Okay? In other words, we need governance to be able to do that. So if we get this straight, then even our young voters, even those who are elderly and have some issues about understanding the narrative of our economy, the narrative of our politics, I think they will have some opportunities, okay? The chance to be good voters, good, learned, and well-informed voters when they exercise the right of suffrage.
This Monday, when everyone goes out to vote, we're going to be electing 12 senators. That's half of the composition of the Senate, and it's going to set our economic backdrop moving forward. We have no shortage of good laws in the Philippines, but what's missing in the system? If you could put your finger on it, what are we lacking to help us choose better leaders? What are we lacking to get on a better economic trajectory?
Well, the missing link, Mikey, is strong political and economic institutions, which could ensure competent implementation of those numerous laws. Now, these institutions are necessary to ensure Congress, for example, to translate constitutional prohibition against political dynasties. If we have a strong and competent Senate, they themselves will take the initiative to implement those constitutional provisions. If we have strong executive institutions, both at the national and local levels, those laws, by all means, can be implemented. In the first place, Congress is required to craft implementing rules and regulations that the President and other agencies of government are duty-bound to implement.
Okay, sir, you've served this country for over 4 decades. How do we convince competent professionals like yourself to run for politics? How do we did you ever think about it? And what held you back? Because what held you back is probably what holds other people back as well. They want to do more, they want to serve, but the practicability of it's just, tell us about how what's holding you back, and what can we do to pave that road so we get a better pipeline of leaders?
Well, many public servants, I am sure, would like to serve government and even in the private sector, okay? But what pulls them back, of course, is the kind of election process that we have in the Philippines. We have been saying about the kind of front runners we have in the Senate, okay? We don't want to entertain people to serve government. We don't have the money to spend on billboards and tarpaulins and even on ayudas. We don't have that. But if we can achieve a very thorough overhauling of our electoral system, in other words, we need electoral reforms, okay, to limit, for example, broadcast and print and broadcast time or radio time, limit exposure in the social media. In other words, standardize the campaigns, and even if the government were to spend on all of these election paraphernalia and the effort to allow the electorate to know more of our candidates and what they can offer, even without spending millions or billions of pesos, I think many, many good people, both in the government and in the private sector, would be more than willing to serve in the public service.
Yeah, here's to hoping this new batch of leaders will push those electoral reforms forward, the ones that will help level the playing field and help us get a wider array of capable and competent leaders. Now, on another front, one last question, sir, because we have you. Can you give us your take on GDP, the whole macroeconomic environment, in a nutshell, because we don't have that much time, where we headed? Q1 GDP came in a little shy of expectations. What does that say about the trajectory for 2025?
I'm not sure if we would be able to achieve even the lower end of the target of 6%. The issue is not about capital reforms or capital market reforms. The issue is not about interest rate policy. The issue is about our ability to produce. The issue is about our ability to inspire confidence among our businessmen and even foreign investors. If we continue to suffer very low scores in terms of corruption index, governance, competitiveness, ease of doing business, we will not be able to have the resources, the ingredients, the elements for a more sustainable economic growth. If we can get our governance right, both political and economic governance, I think it's a big push to achieving good economic numbers. If we can get our budget process better and consistent with the social goals, social objectives of having good quality education, good quality public health system, infrastructure, then we will have a more sustainable, inclusive, and more accelerated momentum of economic growth.
Yeah, we're hoping and praying for the best, especially with the elections ahead. Thank you so much, Sir Diwa Guinigundo, for giving us a lot to mull over and to take stock of as we head into the polls on Monday.
Thank you very much, Mikey, and God bless.